I was sipping my tea when the family group chat buzzed. A flood of wedding photos filled the screen. White dress, cake, Lena beaming. My granddaughter, married last weekend, no mention of me, not a call, not an invitation. Just smiling faces, and my absence, erased. The comments rolled in, so beautiful. What a perfect day! My heart pounded as I typed, then deleted. Was I not invited? Instead, I stood up, walked to my bedroom, opened a locked drawer, and pulled out my will. I gave them everything, and they gave me nothing. Before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Comment below. Before I was the forgotten woman in a group chat, I was Eleanor Marsh, mother, teacher, volunteer, and the backbone of our family. I raised my daughter Claire on my own after her father passed when she was just 6. Cancer took him quickly, and grief nearly took me too. But I didn't have the luxury of falling apart. I had a child who needed lunchboxes packed, homework checked, nightmares soothed. I went back to teaching full-time, swallowed my tears in the teacher's lounge, and pushed forward. Claire was my everything. And when she gave birth to Lena, I thought my heart would burst. I was 52 then, still working, but I made time. Every weekend, I'd drive an hour just to hold that little girl. When Claire divorced, I didn't hesitate. I gave her $15,000 to get back on her feet. No questions, no strings, just love. Lena grew up with my hands in her hair. Every summer, she stayed with me for weeks. Mornings spent at the garden market, afternoons baking cookies, evenings curled up watching old movies. She called me Mimi, and I called her My Light. When Claire worked late or traveled, Lena stayed with me. When Lena had a bad day at school, she'd call me first. When she got accepted into her private high school, she screamed into the phone, "Mimi, we did it!" Because I helped pay her tuition when scholarships didn't cover. Enough. I didn't see it as a sacrifice. I saw it as a gift I was lucky enough to give. I was the first one she called after her first heartbreak. I was the one who brought her soup and tissues when she had mono. I even helped her move into her college dorm, carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs with bad knees and a smile, and I cherished every moment, every thank you, every hug. I never expected repayment, but I did expect remembrance. So when I saw those wedding photos, the flowers, the family dancing, her radiant face, it felt like an erasure, not just from an event, but from their lives, as if all the moments we shared had been boxed up and buried. Still, I wondered. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe an invitation got lost. Maybe she meant to call. But then I thought about the last few months. Claire's clipped tone on the phone. Lena's delayed replies, the ones that used to come, in seconds, now taking days. The visit I offered to plan, only for them to cancel last minute because something came up. I hadn't seen Lena in person in nearly a year. I thought I was imagining things. I told myself people get busy. But deep down, I had known. Love doesn't vanish in a day. It fades over time, like a photograph left too long in the sun. They had slowly turned their backs, and I, too proud, too hopeful, had refused to see it. I wasn't just left off a guest list. I was erased from their hearts, and yet, even in that moment of heartbreak, a part of me still whispered, maybe they'll call. Maybe there's a reason, but another part, the quieter, older, wiser part, was already packing up the pieces of who I used to be. I was the woman who gave them everything. But soon, they would learn what it meant to lose the one person who never once gave up on them. I started noticing the shift 2 years ago, quiet, almost imperceptible at first. Phone calls that once lasted an hour were reduced to rushed 5-minute check-ins. Lena, once eager to share her every triumph and crisis, began texting instead of calling. Claire, too, had become more aloof, more distant. When I offered to take them to lunch or help with something around the house, the responses were polite, but clipped. "We're swamped this month," or "Maybe next time, Mom." There were always excuses, never time. At first, I blamed myself. Had I overstepped? Smothered them? Was I too old-fashioned? Too much? I scrolled back through old texts, my emoji-filled encouragements, photos of my garden, forwarded articles I thought they'd like. I noticed a pattern. Most of my messages ended the conversation. Few were returned, and when they were, they came days later, hollow with forced pleasantries. Still, I refused to believe I was being pushed out. Families drift sometimes. Life gets busy. That's what I told myself, until that Thanksgiving. I had offered to host, just like every year since 1989. I polished the silverware, made 3 pies from scratch, even bought extra folding chairs. But 3 days before the holiday, Claire called. "Mom, we're actually doing something smaller this year, just Lena and some of her college friends. We'll catch up next week." I stood in my kitchen, holding a tub of whipped cream, blinking into the silence. "Of course," I said. "Enjoy." I told myself it was fine. I was fine. But when Thursday came, and the only guest at my table was the sound of the dishwasher humming, I realized something had changed. There was a quiet wall forming between us, invisible but thick with unsaid things. Then came the birthday. Lena's 25th. I sent her a handwritten card with a check, $500. It wasn't much, but enough to treat herself. She didn't call, didn't text. 2 weeks passed, and when I finally reached her, she said flatly, "Oh, I thought I replied. Thanks, Mimi." Claire wasn't much different. She no longer asked how I was sleeping. She stopped inviting me to routine family dinners. When I brought it up once, gently, she sighed. "Mom, you make everything so heavy. We're just living our lives. You don't need to be involved in every moment, as if that's what I wanted, to hover, to intrude. I only wanted to share, to witness, to remain a part of what I helped build. It wasn't just the absence of events. It was the absence of effort. One memory kept replaying in my mind. Last spring, we were all at Lena's graduation brunch, a proud day. I had given a small toast, tearing up as I recalled helping her study for algebra back in 8th grade. Claire had pulled Lena aside afterward. I hadn't meant to listen, but I heard. "You don't owe her anything just because she helped us once. She makes everything about her." Lena didn't argue. She just nodded. I remember my hands trembling as I dabbed at my eyes, pretending to be emotional over joy. But it wasn't pride I felt. It was the first sharp, unmistakable sting of being unwanted. Still, even then, I forgave them. I made excuses. I blamed generational gaps, stress, modern values. But when I saw the wedding photos, it all crystallized. It wasn't stress. It wasn't oversight. It was a choice. I sat alone in my kitchen that evening, phone still open to the pictures. Lena's dress was tasteful, her bouquet blush pink, her hair swept up in the same soft curls I used to brush out every summer night. Her new husband, Thomas, looked kind. I had never met him. In the group chat, my niece wrote, "Beautiful bride, love you both." Claire responded with a heart emoji. I typed slowly. It looked like a perfect day. "I'm happy for you both." No one responded. Not even a thank you. Not even a heart. I stared at the screen, then closed the phone. The silence spoke louder than any words ever could. I wasn't just uninvited. I was unwanted. And once I understood that, there was no going back. After the wedding photos, I told myself I wouldn't reach out first. But old habits die hard. The next morning, I called Claire, straight to voicemail. I called Lena, twice. No answer. I didn't leave a message either time. I didn't want to sound desperate. So I sent a simple text. "I saw the pictures. I hope it was beautiful. You looked lovely, sweetheart." Then I waited. 1 day, then 2. A week. No reply. I kept glancing at my phone, pretending not to care. I watered the garden twice, a vase day just to stay busy. I reorganized my pantry, reread my favorite novels, even tried knitting again. But nothing filled the space they left behind. I started hearing whispers from others. My neighbor Ruth, whose daughter works at the country club where the reception was held, stopped me outside one afternoon. "Oh, Eleanor, the wedding looked so elegant. Why didn't you go? Was it your knees?" "My knees. The only part of me still reliable, apparently." I smiled. "Yes, too much standing. Doctor's orders." She nodded sympathetically, then leaned in. "But it was strange not seeing you there. I always thought you and your granddaughter were so close." I nodded again, lips tight. Inside, I felt something cracking. I couldn't shake the shame. It clung to me like damp clothes. Every time the mail came, I hoped for something, an apology, an explanation. Instead, I received a cream-colored thank you card, typed in a generic font. It read, "Thank you for your love and support as we begin our journey together. The newlyweds." It wasn't signed. No note, no handwriting, no warmth. The return address wasn't even Lena's. It was a P.O. box in another state. I read it 3 times, convinced I missed something. But there was nothing, just polite nothingness. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling fan, whirring. Above me, its blades slicing through the quiet like a metronome, counting out the seconds of my irrelevance. Was I really nothing more than a seasonal ornament in their lives? A relic? I replayed every moment I had with Lena, every scraped knee I kissed, every sleepover where I tucked her in and whispered stories into her ear, every late-night phone call after she and her mother had a fight, the nights she cried over exams, over boys, over herself. Had all of that simply expired? The next day, I tried one last time. I showed up at Claire's house unannounced, something I hadn't done in years. My hands trembled as I rang the doorbell. Claire opened the door, surprise flickering across her face. She stepped out, closing the door behind her. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I tried to keep my voice steady. "I came to see you, and Lena. I needed to know why." Claire exhaled sharply. "Not now, please." "I deserve to know," I said. "What did I do?" "You didn't do anything." But Lena didn't want drama. She just wanted her wedding day to be about her. Simple. Peaceful, as if my presence would have disrupted the peace. "Do you hear yourself?" I asked. "I'm her grandmother. I helped raise her." Claire looked away. "We all have to grow up sometime." I took a step back. My chest burned, but I didn't cry. Not yet. I came here for truth. Thank you for giving it to me. I turned and walked away, the echo of my footsteps louder than anything she had just said. That night, I sat at my kitchen table for hours. I went to the drawer where I kept all the cards Lena ever gave me, crayon drawings, birthday notes, graduation, thank yous. I opened the lid, but I couldn't bring myself to read them. Instead, I took out a pen and made a list. Not of groceries, not of chores. A list of everything I had done for them over the years. College tuition, mortgage help, hospital, rides, holiday hosting, emergency babysitting, grocery runs, birthday parties, love, time, heart, line after line. At the bottom of the list, I wrote one word, erased, then I crossed it out, and below it, I wrote another word, enough, and I knew what I had to do. They had made their decision to leave me out of their happiest moment. Now I would make mine, and it would echo far longer than their silence ever could. The next morning, I brewed my tea a little differently, stronger, darker. No sugar. I opened the old trunk at the foot of my bed. It had been years since I'd looked inside. Dust bloomed into the air as I lifted the lid. Inside were photo albums, childhood drawings, yellowed school awards, My life as a mother and grandmother, layered in snapshots and scribbles. The first photo I pulled out was from 1987. Claire, no older than 8, standing on a porch step with her skinned knee and wild hair. I had just bandaged her, and she'd insisted on taking a brave face photo. I remember what she said when I took it. "You're the best, Mommy. You fix everything." Then another, Claire holding newborn, Lena in the hospital, me standing beside her, eyes swollen from tears. Lena's tiny hand gripped my pinky like she already knew I'd be the one to stay. That day felt like yesterday, but time has a cruel way of folding memories into neat, distant corners. I let the photo fall back into the box. I closed my eyes, and the flashbacks came. Flashback 1, Lena at 7, hair dripping from her bath, crawling into my lap in her pajamas. "Tell me the story about the fox again." I'd told her that bedtime story so many times I had memorized every twist, but she loved how I changed the voice for each character. She would fall asleep mid-sentence, cheek pressed to my chest. Flashback 2, her 12th birthday. I threw her a garden tea party, little sandwiches, fake pearls, sun hats. She whispered, "I wish you were my real mom sometimes." It broke my heart and healed it all at once. Flashback 3, Claire, mid-divorce, sobbing into my kitchen towel. As I held her and said, "You are not alone. You will never be alone. We're a team." Back then, I meant it more than anything. I still do. But something had shifted. The thread had been cut, and not by me. I sat there, photos spread like a spilled deck of cards, my hands trembling. I picked up the pen again and returned to my list, not of what I gave, but what I lost. I lost my place in family traditions. I lost the chance to see Lena walk down the aisle. I lost the joy of being called Mimi with love behind the word. I lost the illusion that love guarantees loyalty. Suddenly, I couldn't breathe. My chest heaved, and I found myself gasping. In the empty room, I stumbled into the living room, collapsed into the armchair, and let the sobs come, ugly, raw, unfiltered. It was the kind of crying that shakes your bones, not just from sadness, but from betrayal. I thought of all the women I knew who had felt this. Mothers pushed aside, grandmothers turned into afterthoughts. It was a silent epidemic, one no one warned us about. The moment I hit bottom wasn't a scream, it was a sentence I whispered to the empty house. They don't love me anymore. And yet, even in that wreckage, something stirred. A small voice inside me, quiet but firm, spoke back. But I still have myself. I wiped my face and stood slowly. Then I walked to my desk and opened the drawer with my estate documents. I pulled out the will, the original one, still naming Claire and Lena as primary beneficiaries, still assuming they'd be there to hold my hand when the time came, still trusting they'd value me the way I had always valued them. I stared at it, then pulled it from the folder and fed it, page by page, into the shredder. The soft whir of paper turning to ribbons was the most satisfying sound I'd heard in months. They hadn't just left me off the guest list, they had left me behind, but I wasn't going to stay there. I picked up my phone, not to call Claire or Lena, not to beg for a seat at a table they'd already cleared of me. I called my attorney. "I'd like to make some changes," I said. "To my will." "Of course, Mrs. Marsh. Shall I schedule an appointment?" "Yes," I said, "as soon as possible." This wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about truth, about recognition, and about rewriting the final chapter of my life with people who had earned their place in it. Have you ever felt replaced or forgotten by the ones you love the most? Let me know in the comments. They had shut the door. But I was done knocking. I had the keys to a new future, and I intended to use them. The following Tuesday, I wore my navy blue slacks, the ones I used to save for PTA meetings and Sunday service. I wanted to look composed, dignified, like a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. The lawyer's office was cool and quiet, decorated in beige tones that made the whole place feel numb. I sat across from Mr. Allerton, a soft-spoken man who had handled my affairs for over a decade. He adjusted his glasses and asked gently, "What would you like to change, Mrs. Marsh?" I didn't hesitate. "Remove Claire and Lena as beneficiaries. Completely." He blinked. "I see. And would you like to designate a new recipient?" I smiled. "Yes, May Carter, my goddaughter, and I'd like to make donations in memory of my late husband and to the Belmont Public Library." He began typing. "May, sweet May, the daughter of my best friend who had passed years ago from breast cancer. May had visited me every Sunday afternoon since, brought me groceries when my back acted up, listened to me talk about roses and family and teaching. She never asked for anything. She just showed up, with warmth, with consistency. The way family should. I included a letter with the revised will tucked in a sealed envelope to be opened only if I passed unexpectedly. I didn't write it in anger. I wrote it in truth. To those who will be surprised by this decision, know that love is not measured in blood, but in presence. I gave what I could. I asked for little. And in the end, I received nothing but silence. I do not write this to punish, but to free myself. Goodbye." When I left the office, there was no grand relief, no cinematic music swelling as I strode toward justice. But there was stillness. A clean silence, like a room finally aired out after years of stale breath. I stopped at the bakery on the way home and bought a cinnamon roll. I hadn't had one in years. Too much sugar, too many calories. But I sat at my kitchen table and ate. It slowly, deliberately, as if reclaiming something small and sacred. The next day, May came by to drop off a casserole. I told her I had something to discuss. We sat in the garden, watching the breeze play with the wind chimes. I explained what I'd done, about the will, about the wedding, about the silence. She didn't interrupt. She just listened, eyes soft, hands folded in her lap. "I don't want your money," she said quietly, once I finished. "I know," I replied. "That's why you deserve it." She blinked back tears, then reached out and held my hand. Not out of pity, but out of love. That was the difference. The days that followed were calm. I returned to my routines, volunteering at the library, walking in the park, organizing my spice cabinet. Simple things, but they felt like mine again. People I hadn't spoken to in a while began to reappear. Neighbors, old colleagues. I invited them for tea, for crossword puzzles, for nothing in particular. Laughter returned to my living room. One afternoon, I found myself humming. I hadn't hummed in weeks. There's a strange kind of healing in choosing yourself after years of choosing others, but nothing, not even peace, lasts unchallenged. A week later, I received a message from Claire. Just one sentence. "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time. I didn't reply. Then another came, from Lena, 3 days later. "I miss you. I'm sorry I hurt you. Please, can we meet?" I nearly dropped the phone. For a moment my heart surged. Maybe this was it, the apology, the recognition. But then I remembered. They had months. They had the wedding. They had my number. Now that the money was no longer theirs to inherit, now they reached out? Still, a part of me ached to see her again, to hold her, to smell that same coconut shampoo she used when she was a teenager, to believe she meant it. But I didn't reply to her either. Some silences must be preserved, not broken, because this wasn't about a single apology. It was about a pattern, a wound reopened every time I reached out and received less in return. I set the phone down, picked up my pruning shears, and went out to the garden. The roses needed trimming, the dead heads needed clearing, and I finally understood the metaphor in full bloom. For the first time in a long while, I chose peace over longing, and as I cut away what no longer served me, I made room for new life to grow. 2 weeks passed, then came the knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone that Tuesday afternoon. The garden gloves were still on my hands, and I'd just sat down with a glass of iced tea when the sound echoed through the hallway. Firm, familiar. When I opened the door, Claire was standing there. She looked composed. Too composed, like someone who had rehearsed her lines in the car mirror. "Hi, Mom," she said. She held a bakery box in her hands. Lemon tarts, my favorite. I didn't invite her in. I stepped outside, closing the door gently behind me. She smiled thinly. "You look good. Healthy." I nodded. "Is there something you needed?" She blinked. "I was hoping we could talk, just clear the air." I motioned toward the porch swing. She sat. I remained standing. "I heard from someone at Allerton's office," she began carefully. "They said you made some changes to your will." I didn't reply. I just watched her face. Claire continued, "I didn't come here because of that, Mom. I came because Lena's hurting. She misses you. We both do." I raised an eyebrow. "She got married without me. She was overwhelmed, planning everything. Thomas's family complicated things. It all moved quickly. She had time to print programs, mail thank you cards." Claire didn't respond to that. She looked down, adjusted her wedding ring. Not hers, her second one. A quiet reminder of how many times I had cleaned up after her chaos. "I'm not asking you to change anything," she said. "But maybe just hear us out." I sighed. "Claire, let me ask you something. If I hadn't changed the will, would you be sitting here right now?" Silence. That was my answer. I nodded, more to myself than to her. "I always believed love would protect me, that if I gave enough, sacrificed enough, I'd never be left behind." She looked up, her eyes glistening. "It wasn't about leaving you behind. It was about Lena wanting a clean start, less family pressure. She said you always made things too emotional." I smiled faintly. I told her bedtime stories. I held her through every heartbreak. Forgive me for being invested. Claire looked genuinely unsure whether to cry or stand up and storm off. I recognized that look. I had seen it when she was 14 and grounded for skipping school. "We just want to make things right," she finally said. "That's all?" I folded my arms. "Then start with honesty." She flinched just slightly. "I didn't change the will out of anger, Claire. I changed it because I saw the truth. I'm not a character in your lives anymore. I'm a chapter. You've closed." She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. "I'm not saying that to punish you. I'm saying it because I accept it. And with that acceptance comes change." She stood, box of lemon tarts still untouched in her lap. "Are we really ending things like this?" she asked quietly. I looked at her, the daughter I once rocked to sleep, who now stood before me like a stranger who'd misplaced the map bag. "Home." "No," I said. "They ended a long time ago. You're just noticing now." She left the tarts on the swing. When she walked down the steps, she didn't turn around. Later that evening, I got a voicemail from Lena. "Mimi, I heard about today. I didn't know she was going over. I want to say I'm sorry. I was selfish. I was scared you'd make me feel guilty for not including you. But I already felt guilty. Every day. I just didn't want to face it." She paused. "I understand why you did what you did. I really do. But if there's any part of you that still misses me, please, let's talk." I sat with that voicemail for a long time. Part of me did miss her. But another part, the deeper, wiser part, understood what was happening now. The unraveling, not of them, of me, the version of me who needed their approval to feel whole. The version who thought love meant staying loyal no matter how invisible you became. That version had been shedding, slowly, and now it peeled away completely. I didn't cry, not this time. Instead, I opened the bakery box, took one of the lemon tarts, and placed it on a plate. Then I picked up the others and walked them across the street to Ruth's house, where her grandchildren were visiting. "Do they like lemon?" I asked. Ruth smiled. "They love anything sweet." I handed them over. "Let them enjoy it. Life's too short to let good things sit untouched." Their motives had finally emerged, but it was too late. What once would have pulled me back now only proved how far I'd already come. The invitations were simple: cream cardstock, handwritten by May herself. "You don't have to call it anything fancy," she'd said. "Just a gathering." But I wanted to call it something, a thank you celebration, for the people who had shown up, the ones who'd kept showing up even when there was no inheritance, no obligation, just love. I rented out the small community center next to the library. I brought in local catering, a string quartet, and a printed slideshow of old photographs. Some with Claire and Lena, yes, but many without. Photos of garden parties, church events, school plays, long-forgotten summer picnics where real memories had formed. May helped me set up. She wore a soft blue blouse and had painted her nails just for the occasion. "I haven't dressed up in ages," she said, laughing. "Feels good." So did I. By the time guests arrived, old students, neighbors, volunteers from the library and food bank, the room was buzzing. Not with pity, but with light. Real warmth. I stood up near the podium, cleared my throat, and gave a small smile. "Thank you all for coming today. Some of you know that I've recently made changes in my life. Some of those changes hurt. But others," I glanced at May, "have been long overdue. A few polite chuckles, soft murmurs. We spend our lives believing that family is everything, that blood is destiny. But I've learned something different. Love is choice, presence is choice. And today, I want to honor those of you who chose me, when no one else did." The applause was gentle, sincere. I finished with a short story about one of my favorite students, how he used to bring me dandelions during recess and say they were gold coins. The boy had grown up, joined the Navy, and now sent postcards from every port. "He reminded me," I said, "that sometimes the smallest things people give us are worth the most." After the speech, we ate, we laughed. I danced, slowly, carefully, with Mr. Patel from the library board. We didn't talk, just smiled, swaying to a song we both barely remembered. Then, just after dessert was served, I saw her, Claire, standing at the entrance, arms crossed, dressed in something just barely formal, enough to show she'd considered the optics. She looked around the room like it was unfamiliar terrain. No Lena, just her. I excused myself and walked toward her. She gave a thin smile. "Didn't know you were hosting events now," she said. "It's a gratitude gathering," I replied, "not a performance." Claire's eyes darted across the decorations, the people laughing in the corners. "You're really doing this, cutting us off." I let her words sit in the air for a beat before answering. "I'm not cutting anyone off. I'm just no longer reaching for people who've already turned away." She shook her head. "You think, this is noble, but it's petty. You're punishing Lena for one mistake." "One?" I said, keeping my voice even. "Or was it the silence after the wedding? The unanswered messages? The way I became someone you could discard without consequence?" "You're rewriting history." "No," I said calmly. "I'm writing mine. The part of my story where I'm no longer the supporting character." Claire exhaled sharply. "You're being cruel." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Cruel was standing on the other side of that wedding aisle, knowing I wasn't there, not even sending a call, a text. Cruel was telling Lena she didn't owe me anything after I gave her my life. That silenced her. The room continued to hum behind me, full of people who cared. Claire blinked rapidly. "So this is it? You'd rather give everything to some nurse who brings you casseroles?" I smiled softly. No, I'm giving it to someone who shows up, every time, with love. For the first time in our entire conversation, Claire looked uncertain, not angry, unmoored. I turned away, walked back into the warm light of the room, and left her at the threshold. I didn't check to see if she stayed. I didn't need to. May was talking with Ruth by the dessert table. She looked up as I approached, eyes searching mine. "Are you okay?" I nodded. "More than okay." I gave my speech, I danced, and for the first time in what felt like years, I felt seen. Not as a source of help, not as an afterthought, but as a person, a woman with value, with stories, with something left to give, and people still worthy of receiving it. They had their moment to return, but I had already moved forward, surrounded by those who didn't need an inheritance to see my worth. 3 months later, the roses bloomed early. Pale pink and full, their petals opened like sighs. I took that as a sign. That life, no matter how harsh the pruning, always finds its way back to beauty. My days settled into a gentle rhythm. Coffee at sunrise, slow walks through the garden, puzzle afternoons with Ruth, and weekend visits from May. She started bringing her niece along, bright-eyed little Eva, who liked to dig in the dirt and called me Miss Ellie. I never corrected her. The nickname felt like a beginning. The house, once echoing with silence, now held soft footsteps and quiet laughter. May cooked on Sundays. I read to Eva on Tuesdays. The seasons turned without drama, and my heart, once heavy with rejection, learned to beat in peace. Claire and Lena never showed up again. Not in person, not in messages. I suppose Claire didn't want to be seen begging, and Lena, maybe she simply couldn't face me. There were days I missed her. I won't lie. Sometimes I'd see a girl in a coffee shop with dark curls and long limbs, and for a breath I'd think, Lena. My chest would tighten with hope, and then just as quickly with the pain of remembering, but longing and dignity do not sit well together, and I had chosen dignity. Then, one afternoon, a letter arrived, a real letter, handwritten, the ink slightly smudged. The return address was Lena's. I stood on the porch a long while before I opened it. "Dear Mimi, I don't know if I have the right to call you that anymore. I'm writing because I've tried to move on from what happened, but I can't. Not really. The silence between us feels like a wall I built, and now I can't tear it down. I was wrong to leave you out. I thought I was protecting myself from guilt, but I realize now that I was just avoiding love. The kind of love that holds you accountable, the kind that shows up even when it's hard. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. I do miss you, I do love you, and I'm sorry, love Lena." I reread it twice, then folded it neatly and tucked it into my desk drawer between the blank stationery and old grocery lists. I didn't cry. I didn't write back. Because love, real love, is not just about apology. It's about action. It's about showing up before you lose the right to. And Lena. She had waited too long. Still, I felt lighter. Because closure doesn't always come from a reunion. Sometimes it comes from being seen, even in absence. The following week, May and I finalized the paperwork for the scholarship fund. It would be named after my late husband, the Thomas Marsh Legacy Grant for Women in Education. I donated $150,000. To start, I chose it because it felt right, because teaching gave me purpose and giving back gave me clarity, because somewhere out there, a young woman struggling through college with no safety net will open her acceptance letter and find my name on the bottom of the grant notice, and maybe she'll remember that kindness doesn't always come from blood. After the fund launched, the local paper interviewed me. "Do you have any advice for our readers?" the reporter asked. I smiled. "Yes. Love is a gift. But don't give it to those who treat it like a transaction. Give it to those who value it as a treasure." That quote made the front page of the Sunday edition. Ruth clipped it and framed it for me. It hangs now in my kitchen, right above the old spice rack. Sometimes I catch myself staring at it as I sip my morning tea. And I think, I did what I needed to do. Not out of spite, not out of revenge, but because I had to save the part of myself that still believed I was worth loving, that I was worth choosing. What would you have done in Eleanor's shoes? Would you have forgiven them or walked away too? Share your thoughts below. I'm listening. In letting go of those who forgot her, Eleanor discovered something far more powerful: how to finally remember herself. There's a particular kind of quiet that comes when you stop waiting to be loved the way you love. It's not bitter. It's not loud. It's simply still. That's the quiet I live in now. It took losing the people I never imagined life without to understand a truth that many women my age learn far too late. Unconditional love should never come at the cost of self-respect. Spent decades believing that sacrifice was proof of love. That saying yes, giving more, being available, even when exhausted, was the highest virtue of a mother and grandmother. I taught, I nurtured, I gave without question. And for many years, that brought me joy. But the thing no one tells you is this: if you train people to expect you to bend, they'll stop noticing when you break. I don't regret loving Claire. I don't regret raising Lena with tenderness. I don't regret the money I gave or the time I poured into their lives. That was my heart in action, and I'm proud of that version of me. What I regret is waiting too long to acknowledge the slow fade of their affection. The missed calls, the disinterested tones, the way I was tolerated, not treasured. I saw it, but I turned away from it. I kept hoping they'd come back, that love would resume like a paused movie. But it didn't. And maybe it was never really paused. Maybe it had ended long before the wedding photos arrived. In choosing to rewrite my will, I didn't punish them. I freed myself from the quiet ache of invisibility, from the burden of proving my worth to people who had already moved on. I created new space for people who show up with casseroles and kindness, for children who dig in the dirt and call me by names they make up, for laughter with friends who remember birthdays and ask how I'm really doing. I've stopped clinging to the story I thought my life was supposed to be, the one where family always finds its way back, where apologies heal everything, where blood is thicker than disappointment. Instead, I live in the truth of what my life is now. Quieter, yes, but also clearer. And in that clarity, I found a new kind of happiness, one rooted not in obligation, but in choice. Sometimes I still look at the photos, the ones tucked in the trunk, Claire as a little girl, Lena in her prom dress. I don't feel anger anymore. I feel a soft sort of mourning. The way you mourn a place you once lived in, a home you outgrew but still remember fondly. I will always love them, but I don't need to chase their love to validate mine. I am enough. I always was. Now, when I walk through the garden, I talk to the roses. I tell them stories about May and little Eva. I tell them how the sky looked that day I signed the new will, how lemon tarts still make me smile, how peace at long last feels like a warm quilt pulled over tired bones. If you're listening to this, and you've ever been left out of something you built with your whole heart, know this: you are not the sum of who abandoned you. You are the sum of what you choose to hold on to, and what you bravely let go of. Forgiveness isn't always about reunion. Sometimes it's about release, and sometimes walking away is the most loving thing you'll ever do for yourself. So if you're still waiting for that phone call, that apology, that moment where they finally see you, stop waiting. Go live. Go. Rewrite your own ending, because love that has to be begged for isn't love worth keeping. They left me off the wedding invitation, but I left them off the will. And in doing so, I finally returned to myself.